It is her journey personally through her traumatic past, but it's also a story about how the news has shifted and what we can do about that.
Welcome to our latest episode of Book Reporter Talks To, where our guest today is Devi Laskar, and we are going to be talking about her third novel, Midnight at the War. We don't have our book reporter review as yet because we're doing this interview pre-pub, but the book has garnered so much really great praise that I want to share some of it with you. Shelf Awareness notes that Laskar's dynamic Midnight at the War impressively captures a journalist more capable of reporting on a global crisis than confronting her own personal chaos. In a starred book list review, they called it an enthralling take on a journalist's futile attempt to separate the personal from the political. And it's one of the millions most anticipated reads of 2026, and the LA Times 10 books to read in April, which was selected by Beth Ann Patrick. And with that, welcome, Davey. So good to see you.
So great to see you. Thank you for having me, Carol.
Well, let's start by you telling us about Midnight at the War.
Well, this was my little passion project during the pandemic. I have actually been a reporter, not a correspondent abroad, but a newspaper reporter in the 80s and 90s. And then I left the business and went back to writing poetry and writing my fiction. And but I've been shouting at the TV and at the newspaper for about 25 years, especially since 9/11. And I just feel like I was kept seeing how the news had shifted from more fact-based reporting to more opinion-based reporting. And I think that coupled with social media, our attention spans have gotten smaller and we're just being fed not exactly all the facts and the truth of any situation. And so during the pandemic, as I was shouting at the TV some more, it was suggested to me that I should maybe write this down and write my story about it. And so, although the book is not me at all, it is about a female a woman of color journalist who is assigned to various hotspots around the world. And it is her journey personally through her traumatic past, but it's also a story about how the news has shifted and what we can do about that.
It's such a look back at what was happening, before 9/11, what we knew around the world. We knew there were little hot spots, but we didn't really know what was going on. I will confess that the morning of 9/11, they say this was a attack. It was a criminal attack, and it was the man Osama bin Laden. I had no idea who they were talking about. I'll be honest with you. No, no clue
Right,
of what they were talking about. I'm like, who's this person? Like, oh, it's not a little plane that went into the building. You think about how
right.
we got the story that day, and we were watching it and how we got the story. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And they made a decision, the network news stations back then, they made a decision after the first couple of days of showing us how the building crumbles, not to show that anymore because out of respect for the families that lost their loved ones that day. And I thought that was a smart decision because it
Hmm.
is actually quite traumatizing to watch it over and over again.
Hmm.
And then the problem with watching something like that over and over again is that you become numb,
Hmm.
right? And then it has no effect, right? And
Hmm.
so I was really interested. I feel like I wanted to tell a story that had these elements in it, but I wanted to do it with compassion and dignity,
Hmm.
and to sort of also spread the message that, we're all people, regardless of our, ethnicity or the language we speak at home or where we go to worship, right?
Yeah, it's exactly true. And I felt that I was reading, the time it was said, it's almost 25 years ago. It's this tense time here and abroad. It's like all of a sudden we started worrying about abroad again. We hadn't been worried about that for a long time. There were
Right.
bubbling things, but we were not really doing this. And we're reeling from the destruction of the World Trade Center, the target overseas, like what is happening to us, blah, blah, blah. You were not a foreign correspondent, which is really interesting because I feel like when you were writing this, I felt like you were somebody who had been boots on the ground. And I remember when we first spoke, I was like, wait, you didn't write overseas? And you were, no, I was always like somebody stationed here. Why this time? Like, I know why you did this time period, but creating the character, what was that like? Because did you know a lot of foreign journalists?
I didn't know a lot of foreign journalists, but I actually, for this book, I did interview someone that I know really well who had been a foreign correspondent. And also, I've just been following the career of Christiane Amanpour, for
Mhm,
example, and Sylvia Poggioli.
mhm,
And they are good examples. They are the spark for this book in the sense that I just remember as I was putting together the character that would later be Rita, right? I was like, well, what I really admire about Christiane and Sylvia is that they went to the Baltic and they went to, those spots, and they just planted themselves and they didn't leave. And
mhm,
they just did not care what anyone thought about it. They realized this was really interesting news, interesting in the sense that this was something that we should all know about, and if they left, we wouldn't know.
mhm.
And their stubbornness is what I was really interested in,
Yeah.
right? And I was like, I can fashion a story based on their like determination to
Mhm.
tell the public what is going on, right? And it wasn't a one-off. They've been doing it for decades now, right? They've been
Yeah.
doing it for years, but it's to our benefit. It's to the public's benefit. It's because of them that we learned something, and then we can make our own decisions about whether we will accept that or we will reject it and tell our government to stop.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I was really excited when I got to like kind of mesh a little bit of their personalities and their storied careers into my book.
Yeah, and it really comes true. We watch NBC Nightly News at night, and I watch Richard Engel, and
Oh, yeah,
I watch the situations he puts himself in, but there's this humanity moment that comes. It's also in your book. There's a humanity moment where he sits down with a family whose home has been bombed out, or somebody who's lost a child or whatever, and has a conversation, often with an interpreter, that brings that story to a totally different level to you, which is
sure.
exactly what those two women journalists did as well. Is
Yes,
they showed us the people instead of just the facts, and it made
exactly.
such a difference.
Yes, yes. And that's actually how we garner sympathy, right? It was
Hmm.
like we know somebody's personal story. We see the consequences of something that has happened to them and how it has affected their whole family. And if we didn't have the reporters there telling these stories, we wouldn't know, right? It does become overwhelming to see all the bad news, right?
Hmm.
And so when you do get to put a human face on it, then it becomes very personal. And then you are actually, as people, we're very empathetic. I think Americans are actually really empathetic people and, and want to help, right?
Hmm.
But if they don't know, they can't help,
Yeah.
right?
And
So,
you actually dedicate that the 2,400, I had no idea, media workers have been killed since 1992, and you dedicate this book to them. And I don't think we think about their lives are in danger quite the same way when they report back to us. It's that danger that underlies every single thing that they're doing. I think about that when I watch Angle at night, but you brought
yeah,
that into play so vividly in the book because
thank
their
you.
lives are in danger all day long as they're trying to create these stories. Who
Right,
do you trust? Forget us trusting the media. Who do they trust with their lives?
right,
Yeah.
right, exactly, right.
And
And and to be in a dangerous situation where you often don't know the language or the customs, right? It's you're taking a risk. But every reporter I've talked to, whether they've been a foreign correspondent or a domestic one, right? This is our job, and we do it cheerfully and willingly, right?
Yeah.
Because we want to tell the public the truth,
Yeah, want to
right?
say exactly, what's going on. So she's also looking for this personal side to her stories, the humaneness in the world where humaneness seems not to be. And I feel like, she's doing that, but at the same time, she's got this whole story herself that she is not in a really good place. Okay. Doesn't have a great
Right.
relationship with her dad. Her mom's really sick and she's trying to get back to her. And we'll get to that in a second, whether that works or not. She's got a husband that she's got like this rocky marriage with, and what's going on there. And then she's got this lover. And this woman's got a lot going on in her life. Besides sitting there, like focusing on the news seems like the easiest thing that this woman is doing all day long. So, why did you create such a greatly complicated character? Because her being her matters so much in the book as well.
Well, if she didn't have any problems and everything was great, it wouldn't really be a story, right?
You gave her four things.
Right. But it's the thing is, you do as a writer really want to protect your characters. You want to keep them from harm's way. But that's actually not a story. Like if you keep saving the day for them, then what are they doing? And it's better to actually, throw them under the bus and see what happens.
Yeah, and what you also are bringing to light, though, too, is okay, you're in this foreign country and you have a different name because her name's Rita, but on her press badge, it's Elena. Like she has a different name, right? Is it
Right. So I think it's the other way. I think she is Elena, right? But
okay?
then, yes. But she goes by Rita. Like what she goes by. But yes, so she is Elena to the world, right? Officially. But she goes by Rita. Her byline says Rita,
Yep.
right?
If I went to straight, so you've got this dichotomy of her, like, looking at her badge, like, who am I? And here you do so much of that throughout the book when you sit there and really think back, like, wait a second, this woman's got a lot going on. You also bring up, you're in this foreign country and you have an interpreter, you have a driver, you have all these people on the ground there that you have to have in your court. You have to make sure they're protecting you and taking care of you because your life kind of in their hands. And
Right.
then you're also bring up this fact that you're not only dealing with those people, you're dealing with the people back in the newsroom, back and what they want you to do as a story. And I think you did such a good job of showing there are these two different camps. Like she's going out to do her job every day, but she's sort of like making her team to go out and work with her. So let's talk about, putting the people together, putting her team together was a really big deal for her.
Yes, yes. And so when she gets to the unnamed city, right, and country, she is assigned the driver and interpreter who the previous person had who had been killed, right? So she just goes with it, right, at the first time. And then when she comes back, it that they have just naturally paired her with them again. And I thought that was really important because a lot of the footage that I saw and a lot of the stories that I've read and news accounts that I've read over the years, they talk about this really close relationship that develops between an interpreter and a journalist when they're, both mired in conflict, right?
Mhm.
And I really wanted to talk about that in the book, about, the friendships that are formed. But I also wanted to have it a moment of conflict because I can't write a book that's going to have them, singing Kumbaya and marching into the
Yeah.
sunset together, because then that's not a story to me. And so I was like, okay, so I'm going to have some conflict here too, because everyone should have their own personality, and I hope I did that.
Mhm.
And so I was just hoping to put all the personalities together and just see what happened. And so
And
yeah.
very much so. And it's also she's going for the story. They know their country. They know what can and cannot work and can and cannot happen. And she's charged with doing the story. And they're like, well, wait a second. This could be dangerous. This could be this. And then there requires a moment where she's leaving and she's trying to get them to be able to come with her. She's trying to save her team. And that ends up having a huge personal cost to her as well. And you
Right.
see her humanity so much in, and I don't want to give away like, what ends up happening, but we as readers are seeing the dates ticking by on the calendar. We know what's going to happen because we're looking back. And I thought you did such a good job of that day, what ends up happening for her.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's hard to talk about without giving stuff
I
away.
know it's hard to say something without like saying the spoiler.
Yeah. But there's these moments where you realize your attachment to these people. It was even that moment towards the end where the one woman she knows likes to have candy. And she says, "Let's go see if we can find some of the candy. We know where the place is." And if we could just talk about that for a little while, because these little details in the book are the things that make it really special, because then they say, like, but you can get it here. So let's talk about that moment because it happens a few times during the book with this woman.
Yes, so she has a friend, a professional friend, and so you get to see their how they met, right?
Yeah.
And then you get to see what has happened to her, the friend, and then you see the friend pop back up at the end. And so what I really wanted to do is just show that, despite all the things that have happened in between, they still really care about each other.
Mhm.
And they just want to have this one moment where they're both at peace,
Yeah.
right? Just having sharing a like a an ordinary moment, right? In a war zone, right?
Yeah.
Just an ordinary moment so that they have something that they can both look back on later and be like, okay, we had our minute where
Yep.
we were just doing something really normal, like normal people.
And it's just like it's a really small thing. It's like this sounds really crazy, but I'm at the hairdresser and they have a box. They have this candy. I never really eat candy, but they have this thing. And I was thinking of taking the pieces I like out. I'm serious. When I was reading the book, and I'm thinking like, oh, those little ones that are shaped like a pineapple, they're really strawberry, and the caramel things, and
That's
like,
right.
and you know what I'm talking about. And it's just this little tiny, it's a tiny piece of joy that you were
Yes.
dropping into the book is this little moment of joy. And they go to the one place to try to get this, and it's like bombed out, like it's just not there anymore. And you realize also, just by that little telling, how much changes that is familiar that will undo. And
Yeah.
it's not just the building that came down, it's the place you went to that now
Yeah.
you go and the second floor is gone. And you're like,
Right. And if you think about it, I have not been a correspondent
mhm,
abroad, but I have been a traveler abroad.
mhm,
I've traveled quite a bit. I've had the great privilege of being able to do that. And I've seen like India at various states, times and states, right? And I've seen the United States as it has evolved, and I've seen other countries over the years as I revisit them. And that is the one thing I've always noticed is like how things have shifted, right?
mhm,
Physically, like it's, oh, this street is renamed, or now there's a garden, or even just in our neighborhoods, in our streets in
mhm,
America, right? Like when they do traffic calming measures, right?
mhm,
And they plant a tree in the middle of the road and they shift the lanes,
mhm,
that's
right,
that's a change, right?
right.
And so if you're not used to that and you haven't seen it, and you remember that being a two-lane road and now there's a big tree in the middle and you have to slow down. It's sort of like that. It's like it gives you a moment to pause to kind of
Mhm.
reflect, oh, what else have I noticed that has changed, right? Even as we are, moving forward, right?
Right. And it's, yeah, as you're sitting there, it's okay. The world is changing all around me in little tiny pieces, as well
Yeah,
as that very big story.
right.
I also see guilt is a big thing here. Guilt
Mhm.
consumes her on so many levels. Was that always there? Like when you were developing your character, did you know her right away, or did you come to know her as you were writing?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think I knew certain aspects of her. So she's not me, but I did give her two of my stories. So there's that story of those kids in Florida. So that was actually a story of mine.
Okay.
And I gave her my childhood story
Mhm.
and the trauma. So that's real. So I knew those two things about her. And that's where I started. And I didn't know anything else except that, oh, this is how she's going to react to this story. And this is the thing that she's carrying with her since she was a little kid. And then everything else just came out of that. And it took a little while, you know. I will freely confess that this is the first book that I've ever asked for an extension for.
Mm.
We had illnesses in our family, and so I was taking care of a sick parent. But I had to kind of take a break, and I'm actually really glad I did that because I was taking care of a sick parent, and then I got to come back to it with really fresh eyes.
Mhm.
And it really did help me really deepen the character because I was like, oh, well, now I can, because I'm looking at it with fresh eyes, I know that I see, it became more Swiss cheese and less cheddar, right? Because then
Right.
I could see the holes and I could fill them. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like, what do I really want to develop about her? Why did she have these two men in her life? Why does she have these conflicts of what's going on?
right,
And you can fill it in more when you've had some distance from her.
right.
You sit there and say, what will happen? So many things happen in our natural lives. It's even COVID happening in our lives. And
Yeah,
this pause, I mean, it was a huge pause of how do we look at work? How do we look at what
yeah,
we do? How can we accomplish what we do in a different way? I mean, we made a very quick decision 6 years ago. It was about 6 years ago, just about now, that we'd all just go home. We all just be, work from
right.
home in March. And we never went back to the office. Like we didn't have our lease was up. And I said to everybody in April, do you want to do something different? They go, yeah. And every time it rains really hard, we sit there and say, that was a really good decision. But you also realize you can only do it if you've got a really mature team, because if you're
Yes,
going to teach somebody, you see where the holes are. And what I feel like in your book is when you come back to it, you're right. You're seeing the holes of what's going on, of how I didn't completely develop this character because I wasn't talking to her the same way. And now
right.
I'm going to talk to her as the writer coming back to her. I'm like editing myself. I'm self-editing,
Right, right. I mean, you can't edit a blank page, right? So, no, and though, some days you really want to. You're like, I sort of know what it's going to look like in my head, but don't want to take the time to write it down. But then you do, and then, once you actually have something, then you can edit it and make it better and revise it and return to it over and again. And I do feel like that with Midnight, I was really, really lucky in a sense that I just gave myself that a little bit of extra time, and it did really help. It helped me like just flesh her out more, and I was really happy with the result. So
Yeah.
so it was worth it. It was worth the taking the time.
I also think that the timing of it coming out is a really good time as well, because it's a time when we're looking at journalism again around the world. I mean, we haven't stopped doing it, but we're really focused right now on where
Sure.
is the situation? Where is the situation? How is that being covered? And I think you do look at reporting in a different way.
Yeah,
You're just looking at like, do I trust this feeling? Do I not trust this feeling? Am I just there are many times where we switch channels like all over the place just to see what everybody's saying, just to see like
sure.
or how we're going to piece the story together and what we're going to come to a conclusion about. But it's an interesting time because I think that people want to know, but they also don't know how to find out really what's going on. And I
Right.
think what you're doing is you're showing how she's trying to put that story together. She's trying to be the Christiane and bring the story in a way that you're not going to see everything. You're going to see this part, but this part's going to give you that.
Right. Exactly. Right. And here's the other thing about writing about a reporter. It's like you never really get to finish the story. You're taking a snapshot in time.
Yeah,
You're doing your very, very best, right? And then you have to move on because there are other stories,
right.
right? And I sort of wanted to mimic that in her personal life as well, as that, well, she has this amount of time and this is as what she can do, right? For her family, for her husband, for her boyfriend. And then but that's it because then she has to move on, right? And I actually thought that was That was actually really fun for me as a writer. I was like, oh, good. Now we get to ch turn the page and do something else, right? No,
What is
but
she
no.
going to do? Like, what is
Right.
going to happen? Harboring this like secret, like what is going to happen with her, and how is she going to do this? And it was a very interesting play on she's in danger, but she's in really personal danger as well because she's
Right.
attached herself so much to her work and to what can she expect? Okay, you do this all day long. What do you expect from your husband when you go home? How are you going to sit there and explain how what you saw and make it relevant and then make dinner? Okay. And
Right. Right. Right.
let's watch a movie on TV. Well, let me tell you about what happened yesterday.
Right, right. And I remember this NPR story, which was hilarious. It was about it was quite some time ago, and it interviewed a bunch of women correspondents, and some of them were expecting, and one of them, it's on radio, but one of them goes, "Shh, don't tell my husband, but I'm gonna go back to work after the baby comes." And I'm like, I think you just told your husband. And
I think
it
you
was
just,
really cute, but I was like, oh, okay.
oh,
No.
you're really sure you're going to do that? Okay, because I think he heard. It's yeah, and you're sitting here saying your whole life is going to change because of one like little moment. One little moment like that is going to change your whole life. And you're
Right,
sitting there also, I'm in a place where world is changing every moment as well. It's
right,
sort of like both things. What am I doing to this child? But I think the office politics were the things that really got me. They call her, they go, you have like 2 inches. Well, I need 12. Well, you get three, and it's like that. And that was happening when it is what happens in the newsroom. It's a little bit
right.
different now because you got online, you can just go for it. Tell us what
Right,
you're.
right. But back then, especially for newspapers, and at the turn of the century, they weren't really there. The online presence wasn't that big at all.
No,
If yeah, and so, people were still buying newspapers and still, so the column inches were, up for grabs, and we were constantly negotiating. And so all the banter and all that stuff. I mean, that happens in any newsroom,
yeah,
regardless of whether you're on the international desk or not, right? The negotiations, right, with your editor. And so I really wanted to bring a little taste of that for the reader because I think it's fun. It's fun to watch, be the fly on the wall and see people negotiate
yeah. And
for what they want.
yeah, I think this is front page. I don't think it is. Well, I think it is front page, and I think this is why, and this is the angle I'm bringing to it. So you're dealing with your people on the ground. You're dealing with a language you don't completely understand, a culture you don't completely understand, though you've come from a different culture, so you know something. And then at the same time, you're dealing with these people that try to get your story. You have to get it filed at a certain time. You've got to make sure you have the communication to be able to do it. It's a lot. It's a lot more than just writing it down. It's you're really showing all the other pieces that go into it. And
Yeah, thank you.
I
I'm
like that.
glad you enjoyed it. I'm so
Yeah,
glad.
yeah, I just you built up the tension about that as well. I also love that you're writing. I want to talk to you about this. You have very long paragraphs. Okay, and I was looking at this because some of them are as long as a page. And sometimes I say I'm going to stop at the end of the paragraph, and I'm like, Davey, I'm like two lines in. I'm 2 pages in, like trying to get to. Tell me about that because for your editor and you working together, how do you decide, this is going to be a long paragraph? Tell me.
Well, I've been so lucky, all three times. I've just had these wonderful editors, and I've never really encountered um a problem like, like make this shorter, or I've actually had the because I am a poet first. I identify as a poet first.
Hmm.
I tend to write short, and because I was a reporter, I've always been told to write shorter, and so I finally am listening now at 59. and and so I will say this is my longest book. My first novel was a little bit less than 40,000 words. And there's a lot of white space because it was a more experimental book. And then my second novel was all less than 50,000 words. And this is like 75,000 words, which is double basically of
Mhm.
my first novel. So for me, I was just really interested in writing the story. And once in a while, I would just remember, I'm like, oh, I don't actually have to write short. And so I didn't really make a conscious decision to make long paragraphs or short. I was just trying to I feel like my work has shifted over the years. When I was first starting out as a fiction writer, I really clung to my journalism roots
Mhm.
and my poetry roots, and I kept trying to be very factual and very short. And then I went to this wonderful writers conference. It's for people of color. It's called Vona, and the teachers are people of color and the students are people of color, and it was really fun. And one of the teachers there, she said, I kept saying to her, I feel like the journalism has infected my fiction. And she goes, no, you are using an incorrect I word. The word you're trying to say is inform. The journalism has informed your fiction. And so she helped me shift my perspective, which really helped me, like, so now I get to marry the poetry, the journalism, and the fiction into my work. And so
Very
some of the sentences are super short,
Yes.
right? And then some of the sentences are long, and some of the paragraphs are longer because now I'm like, okay, I can actually write this longer without feeling bad about it or like beating myself up because I am marrying the all the different parts for this prose.
So people who listen to this on audio, you're not going to understand this, but when you look at the page, you will understand because it's like, wait a second, that's a paragraph is the entire page. Is there, and then you see like what you're doing is it's all a complete thought and it's a longer complete thought and it can be a whole long page. But I did notice just now, I was like picking up
Thank
on this
you.
stuff.
I'm glad.
I also love the parentheses with the dash, dash, dash to talk about where she is or where she is headed. And why did you choose not to tell the readers where she was? Because that dash comes up and it's like it's a secret. It's it's something we don't it's privileged information. Oh, you tell me. I'm telling you. You tell me. You tell me. Stop now.
I really did not want to write about a specific country, and I didn't want the focus for the reader to be like, well, that's not exactly true for, Algeria or Morocco or, are you really in Jordan? I just didn't want, I wanted them to really focus on the story.
Hmm.
And I just wanted to write about the region because while there are very specific differences, right, between all the countries in the region,
Hmm.
the region by itself is the region, right?
Hmm.
And it is I'm not trying to say it's homogenous, but I really wanted to focus on a story rather than make it be a travel guide to like, well, don't go to Cairo if you're going to do that, right?
Yeah.
Like I wasn't interested in that. And the same thing like when the character goes to India, right? Like I have her, be in some certain cities, but I don't really say the
Yeah.
neighborhoods or some of the places that she's been to because it doesn't matter. It's more that I want them to realize that she is in India and or she's somewhere in the Middle East and that she is doing her job,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And I wanted the focus not to be on, whether I was getting something like, like, well, why did you say that about Cairo? I'm like, I didn't because it's not Cairo.
Right,
And
right, right.
honestly, it was my little fictitious country in the middle of the region, right? And so it is near Egypt, but it's not a real country, right? It's
No, it's
just
dash, dash, dash.
it's dash dash dash, right?
But you know,
So
when I saw it the first time, I was like, oh, this is a galley. I guess they're going to fill it in later. And I was like, no, this is not getting filled in, Carol. This is not what's going to end up happening.
Right,
But you know, I
right.
also feel like if we gave most people a map of the region and we just said, draw where all these countries are, I know I probably couldn't do it. And I think most people couldn't say, this is exactly where these countries are. Like a couple of weeks ago, we were hearing about this Gulf that's a big problem. I would love to see how many people could actually figure out where that little strait is on the map. And we're hearing about things. So what you do there is it's this blank slate instead of sending us to an encyclopedia to look up or online. Encyclopedia is such an old thing, but a map of where the area is and what could
Right.
happen.
Right. And I think, not to disparage our public education system, but it is true that a lot of public high school students, when they graduate, they can't place themselves on a map in
Hmm.
America.
Hmm.
And that's not the case everywhere else, right? They take their studies quite seriously. And so it might be a small nod to the fact that maybe we should be focusing a little bit more on political science and geography
Well,
in this country.
in my first job, I spent a lot of time traveling around the country.
Hmm.
And I was doing fashion shows around the country. I was the one that was commentating the fashion shows. Believe me, I couldn't tell you peplum from anything. It was more like I warmed up the crowd and picked people to win prizes. But it was interesting to see America and have really traveled to all of the places because we see it as where we are or big cities or whatever. But to go to small places and see what was going on, very interesting. And when we first started our company, we were on AOL. And as a
Hmm.
result, we have readers from across the country, which
Right.
many people have coastal. And we have, when we do an event, we'll say, where are you from? And we'll get
Right.
44 states, 43 states, 24. And you're looking at it's not just these people. And I love that because I think you get a blend of what's going on. And I think what you've done here is you've just said this is what could happen in this region, wherever this is. Like, because it could be the same story anywhere.
Right. And actually, because I don't name it, it could be actually happening in America. We
Hmm.
just don't know, and the thing about Midnight at the War is it's not specific to the region.
Hmm.
It's specific to the reporter, and the reporter is American, and the reporter goes through her own stuff in America. And so the war is actually in America as well as anywhere else. We're just maybe not seeing it reported that way. But if you think about like all the things that happened around 9/11, if the 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 rest of the world reported it in a different way, right? Because
Hmm.
it wasn't happening to them, but it was
Hmm.
the first time that it was happening to us, right? And so it was reported in a different way. And that's another thing I'm trying to bring to the book, which is like, we should have one standard of like just the facts, and it doesn't matter where it is,
Hmm.
right? Like if you think about it, like one of the things that I talked about in the book was, child marriage, right?
Hmm.
So obviously it's going on in other parts of the world, but it's also going on in this country, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
but people don't talk about it here. They are like, oh no, it got outlawed. And I'm like, yeah, it's still on the books in a lot of states, and it's still okay. Like nobody is doing
When
anything
you're
about
sitting
it.
there reading in the book, and it's like, yeah, you think that's not happening here, but yeah, it's still
Yeah,
happening.
it's
It's
still
still happening.
happening. Yeah.
And, you know what I also think about if 9/11 happened in New York, okay, that was center of media, center of so many different things. Chicago could have been different. San Francisco could have been different. LA could have been different. Think about the bombing that would happen down in Oklahoma. It was a big deal, but it wasn't the same thing as the media power of the country was where
Right.
the whole thing happened. It
Right.
unfolded looking out the window of NBC, and you're seeing what's happening. You
Right. Right. And it is New York is considered, it's the Big Apple. It is the like the city of the world, right?
Right,
Everybody like knows New York, no matter where you are in the world, right?
right.
And so to attack that city, right? It is trying to make a statement,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And it is trying to bring fear. I mean, that's what terrorism is. And they
Mm-hmm.
succeeded, right? Like if
Mm-hmm.
you can attack a city like New York, you're not safe anywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the other thing, right? It's like I think that people really need to have candid conversations about what we want,
Mm-hmm.
right? What kind of society do we want? What are we willing to do to, and how are we going to hold our elected officials accountable,
And
right?
how are we also going to hold the news accountable?
And how
The
are we going to hold the news
news
accountable? Because,
accountable for just not jumping,
right,
not leaping, just sitting
right,
there and having this sit back of like, is it really going to happen? Is this really going to happen? Is this real?
right,
Or are we just ramping up every single day
right,
fear and everything else with people? And it's a you're at an interesting moment too, because it used to be you had to watch the news. Like, let's
right,
think of it, you were watching. Even during 9/11, there was not a lot of online news. There wasn't
right,
the same
correct.
kind of chatter. I mean, there was a story that was unfolding on AOL that my business partner had gone over to AOL's editorial director was putting together. It's not like now where everyone's got a camera, everybody's posting, I mean, you watch all day long. Young children are making news commentary about whatever they're talking about.
Right,
Everybody's making a commercial all day long. Whether
right.
their story is correct or not doesn't really matter.
And that is really frightening, right?
Mhm,
Because we do have citizen journalists now, and a lot of them do really good work.
mhm,
They are the eyes, right? Because not, the reporters are smaller in number, and in the outlets now are
mhm.
smaller in outlets.
Yep.
And so that's great, but the problem is that if they're not trained, right? They can miss something, right?
Yeah.
Or and because smaller outlets are now closing or have closed,
Hmm.
right? We're missing a lot of stuff in America because we're
Hmm.
not there on a Monday night at the city council or at the
Hmm.
county commission office. We're not holding our local people accountable, and so we don't know what's going on, and then they've passed something, and then all of a sudden we have terrible consequences,
Hmm.
right? And so it's important, and I hope that the book, like, sort of in a compelling way talks about how we need to be a little bit more vigilant about, and a little bit more skeptical about all the things that we see, and not to fully accept something until somebody has actually taken the time to fully research
I
what
agree with
is
you.
actually happening,
I agree
because
with you. There's so
you
many news
can.
stories that come out later. Like there's a big budget crisis in one of the towns in New Jersey over school budget. And you're sitting there like, how the heck did that happen? And
Right.
you're realizing now, like I used to work at a newspaper in Jersey City years ago. My dad
Yeah.
worked there too. We were in that newspaper. That newspaper's gone. So that was Hudson County, which has got all these issues going on, gone.
Right.
Then the Star Ledger, which was the paper of New Jersey, is now only online. So you
Right.
can't get, and the online edition sometimes had different things than the print edition had. And now you're sitting there sometimes, okay, New York Times, I'll get a story online that's not going to be in the paper till the weekend. And
Right.
or it's vice versa, it's in the paper. So you don't even get the same timing of you got the thing in your house. It sounds really old, everybody. I got it. You opened it up on page 6, everybody saw the same thing.
Exactly.
Now you don't know whether you're getting the shorter version of the story, the longer version of the story, or what's going to end up happening. And
And yeah, and I think we were talking about this off camera, that, if you and I are waiting for flights at the airport, right? And then we're watching somebody, talk about something, and then your flight is called, and then that announcer makes an apology, then unfortunately we're both right, which is a problem, because
mhm,
then you and I are gonna argue. You're gonna be like, no, I saw this with my own eyes. And I'm
right.
like, yeah, but you didn't see the apology. And I think that in this age where everyone is trying to be first, I think they really need to be right. I don't think we should be, putting news in the online or on the newspaper or on the TV until we know that that is correct. And if that costs us a few extra minutes, it's going to actually have better consequences for us as people later, right? Like, rather than us arguing over someone's apology, right? Right?
Mhm.
Why? Let's avoid the apology. Like, let's just wait until you have all the facts and then just present them, rather than
Right.
say something just to be first and then apologize 5 minutes later.
Well, let's also go to citizen journalism on Instagram or whatever, that someone's missing. I remember the woman was missing, her boyfriend, like what happened, blah, blah, blah. And we've got all these citizen journalists telling us stories. And
Right.
that is almost getting in the way of the real investigation, but the investigation needs those people. So where is the line today? Because you're
Right.
talking about a different time in journalism where that wasn't happening. Now
Right.
you're melding those two things because those people might have some really great ideas, but they're also acting like reporters on Instagram telling you what happened that day. We're going back to what are the facts? We're going
Right.
back to, but you want to be first. And we've now let so many people just be first because all you got to do is have a camera and a presence online and you're first.
Right.
It's
Right.
really
And it's it
okay.
it it's a conflict.
It's a conflict. So let's talk about another conflict. Was the title always Midnight at the War?
Always.
Always. Oh, I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
So tell us about the cover because I know you and I talked about this weeks ago, but tell us about the cover.
Though I love this cover. So I really wanted a cover that was a little mysterious and it sort of talked about, like you see the staircase doesn't really lead anywhere and there's a door, but you don't know where it goes. And I think it's sort of indicative of that there is so much she doesn't know that she's trying to find out. So
Mhm.
I absolutely adore this cover. This was amongst the first batch that was sent to me for review, and I picked it right away, and we've all been delighted ever since. So
Like they're all, it feels like they're all different doors. Like which way is she
yeah,
going to
they're
go?
all
What is she
different
going to do?
doors, and we don't know which one is going where, and we don't know what the answer is.
And we've got the half moon up
And
here.
I love my crescent moon.
The crescent moon is there, the door, and it's a novel. And I like where these words are too. I can't really pick this up on the camera because like a novel is going to take you through this door, and then where are you going? And
Right.
I like the way that whole played through. So, so I
Thank
don't know
you.
if I'm gonna have the person's name right. Sneha Mathan.
Sneha Matan, yeah.
Sneha Mathan voices the audiobook. Now, what about her narration like grabbed you when you were listening to the audio tapes?
So, I really wanted someone who was like me, in the sense that because I hear my own voice, obviously, as I'm reading this stuff out loud to myself, but I really wanted someone who was like me, who spoke multiple languages, right? So it was English that was very easy to understand, and it is American English, right? But it had that you can tell from her voice that she knows other languages, and I
Mhm.
really loved that global aspect, and I was delighted that she was able to read the book, to
Right.
do the audio work, because that's exactly the voice that I hold in my head when I am reading the book aloud to myself. And like, oh, it sounds like her, that it's a person who is fluent in English, but speaks other languages.
Yeah, and could dash into them in 2 seconds and do this whole
Right.
book in those
And I,
languages. No
right,
problem.
right,
And she would get through the long paragraphs because it's totally different in the reading experience. It's completely
right,
different kind of a thing.
right,
It was really interesting because you realize when you're listening to something that, well, what is this person bringing to the story? Why did they select that person? And to know that they would have been able to talk, they talked your language, they spoke your language is
right,
basically what it is. Do you
right.
read the book aloud to yourself to hear the cadence and hear what's going on?
Yeah, so I have a great story about that. So I'm a poet first.
Oh,
In graduate school, like a million years ago, I was really, really lucky. I got to study with Lucille Clifton, the poet, and she was amazing. She was an amazing teacher, a good friend, and she really believed in oral tradition, right? She was like, she used to talk about how did we tell stories to each other? How did we pass stories to each other before there were books and audio tapes and stuff like that. And she's like, we would sit together in the evenings and we would tell stories to each other and we would repeat our stories over and over again until somebody else got the whole thing and then would pass it to someone else. And so she was the one who always taught us, like, as we're writing something, if we want to know if it's done, we read it out loud to ourselves, right?
Mhm.
And then if our tongue trips, right, or if we stumble, then all that is an indication that we have incorrect word choice. And we have an opportunity then to correct, right? So, with all of my books, and especially with Midnight, I read the book front to back a couple of times out
Wow.
loud to myself because it really helped with the flow.
Hmm.
But also then as I'm reading it to myself, I'm like, oh, she wouldn't have thought this yet because this thing hasn't happened, right? So that has happened a couple of times where I flipped something because I'm like, oh, I have to get to this. I have to get to point B first
Yeah.
before I can actually, right? And so, and I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't been listening as I was reading it aloud. Yeah.
So I discovered you for the first time on this book. From here, what would you tell people of your work to read next?
Oh, oh, that's such a good
What's that?
question.
I know. I
Um,
just think, I just was.
yeah, yeah. So, this is my second book with Mariner.
Mhm.
So my previous book with Mariner was Circa, which came out in 2022. So that is a story set in North Carolina about a young person in the 80s and sort of her navigating her life. And I would strongly recommend that book as a place to go next because it is really different.
Mhm.
And also because I had a classmate in graduate school who wrote a book called The Buddha in the Attic, Juliet Suka. And so she was my classmate and she wrote The Buddha in the Attic and it was first person plural. And so when I started writing Circa, I was like really enamored, right? And I was like, I can do that too. So I tried really hard for 3 months to write Circa in first person plural, and it stunk. And so I was like, oh, I can't do it. And so then I like went through all the different iterations. And when I landed on second person, I could hear the voice like clear as I'm talking to you, like clear as a bell.
Mhm.
And so then it's a book that is told entirely in second person.
Mhm.
And so it's fun. It's
Yeah.
just different. And second person is really fun because you can go, it is reflexive, so it is the I, but it also invites the reader to be fully experiential in the book. And so
Mhm.
I would recommend that. And then, of course, my first novel is The Atlas of Reds and Blues. And so that's always a great place to start as well.
Okay. So we got a good entry points. What's next for you? I know you work on poetry, music. You have this, very diverse group of projects that you're working on. What's next? What are you doing next?
I am right now sort of feeling my way through a memoir.
Ooh.
I My family is from India, and both parents, and they grew up in Calcutta, which is now Kolkata, right? And they experienced famine before, during, and after World War II. And it has really changed their relationship with food.
Hmm.
And so I am sort of embarking on this very personal memoir, mostly about food stories in my family, but also about how the famine has changed their relationship to food. And so I'm sort of working on that. And then I am still working on my poems, but I'm trying to see like the next fiction project that I like working on different things at
Hmm.
once
Yes.
because obviously when I get really close to finishing, then I sort of uh, move all my attention to that one book. But right now, as I'm feeling my way through things, I'm just kind of dabbling in different spots to see what's gonna rise to the surface.
And it's interesting when people grew up with a famine, with food not available. What's happened to them food insecurity wise for the rest of their lives? Like, leave nothing on your plate. Make
Yes.
sure everything is eaten. When you go to a store, you look at food in a different way. You look to make sure you have the staples on hand. It's got to be completely different than, and
Yeah.
what if I buy this, if I buy rice, how many other things can I do with it? Am I,
Right.
yeah?
Right. And it's true, like, you know, people in America and people all over the world, not just America, but people in America through the Great Depression experienced exactly the same thing. They
Mhm,
experienced deprivation. And so that generation of people, they're now much older, but they themselves have food insecurity issues, but
mhm,
they've passed it along unconsciously to their family. Like
mhm,
even if they have plenty to eat now, their relationship to the food is very interesting to me because they are so they get upset, because they know people who have passed because they didn't have enough to eat,
mhm,
right? And so I really like I think I'm just like everyone else. Like, I love to, I love a good scoop of ice cream, right? And
mhm,
so like, but it is true, like when you are raised in a family that has experienced famine, like you better not leave a bite on in that bowl, right?
mhm. Yeah.
Better
You know,
not
my
leave a bite.
dad's 96 and a half, and he grew up in a family of eight. And
Wow.
what he is, there's seven boys, one girl, and he is always talking about how he doesn't remember not having food on the table. He doesn't remember like not having clothes, not having books to go to school, not having any of these things. He doesn't remember. Now, it's 96 and a half, so he forgets a lot. I mean, let's go there though too. But he said, my father didn't have a big job. But how did we do it? How did my mother put food on the table every night? How did they? And it's a really interesting story that I don't think he's going to be the one that's going to be able to answer for me, but he consistently brings this up of how did we do it when now people can't? And he said,
Right.
my father was not making a lot of money. How did we do things?
Right,
So,
right. And
it,
it's just a different mindset, right? It's just like what you said a few minutes ago about how people repurpose, like you just don't throw anything away, you
mm-mm.
repurpose it, right?
Mhm.
I love those videos on YouTube, like how things work or how to make something out of something else, right?
Right.
Because I'm like, oh, if you tie the spoon with a cord and you do this, then you can make your own, you can make
Mix
your own
master.
squid, right? And like, there, I love those videos because you're like, oh, I would never have thought of that, and it's true, like they repurpose what's already in the home, so you're not rushing out to buy the newest gadget, which is actually, if you think about the TVs and the dishwashers and the washing machines we had when we were growing up, Carol, like they didn't break down,
No, they
right?
didn't. No, they
No,
didn't.
like, and if
No.
they did, they got fixed once, and the repairman told you exactly what to do in the future, and then you never saw that man again, right? And now, I feel like everything breaks down in like
Well,
20 minutes.
we love to cook, really love to cook. And
Yes,
our
dude.
oven is from 1972 when our house was
But it
built.
works
And
great.
people with two ovens, double oven, yeah,
Yeah,
gas. It's an electric range. My husband wants a gas one. And I live in terror of getting a new oven
right.
because I just know it's going to break. And I had a
Yeah,
friend that moved into a condo and she went to make Thanksgiving dinner. She'd been in it 6 months and the oven didn't work. And I was just there like, my gosh, this is what's going to happen. And they said that, like, should we replace our Sub-Zero refrigerator? But the new ones are only going to last a year and a half. Like they tell you, it's not. I'm like,
right.
oh my gosh, this is also so our kitchen, if you go in it, people sit there and they go, oh my gosh, it's so, I said, no, reflective. We could do 1972 in here, but I'm telling you, I am terrified of buying a new oven because
Yeah, no, I believe
I
you.
might
I
have to
believe
buy
you.
two and one just not used until the time comes because you just have no, it's just nothing's built the same way it was. It's really horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hope I actually reflected a little bit of that because that is the mindset everywhere else in the world is
Yeah.
like I've wherever else I've been, they'll take the plastic wrapping of something, and they'll sew something and they'll make that into a little grocery bag, or
Right.
they'll plant something in it, and then that'll be the little container for the seedling until it's ready to move to something bigger. And like, they don't throw anything away, and I marvel at that. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
you
Like,
have
wow,
just
how'd you do that?
repurposed. Yeah, yeah.
How'd you do that? Well, everybody, I recommend Midnight at the War for many reasons. Like, look, this is also a slim read, folks. This is a very slim read, but there's so much packed into it and there's so much story. And I left the last little bit because I read this early. And I said, I'm going to read the last little bit because I want to make sure I'm like back into it before I sat down and talked to you today. Because I said, I've got to get back into that character. And I slipped right back in because I remember her, which is really great.
Oh, great. I'm really happy. Thank you so much, Carol.
I wish you much success. And to the rest of our readers, I look forward to seeing you next time on Book Reporter Talks to.